lead to conversions. And the sooner you start those conversations, the sooner the clients and cash flow start coming in. I have Katherine here, and she's going to tell us a little bit about herself, why this matters to her, and why this should matter to you. Katherine, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Shauna. It is my pleasure to be here. I'm very excited. I've waited a long time to be able to have this conversation with you. So really looking forward to it.
It really has been quite a while, but you've been on an adventure. Go ahead and tell everybody about yourself.
Well, I'm a sales success business coach and sales trainer. And the reason I do that is I've been doing sales for over 30 years in the corporate world. And I transitioned from corporate salesperson, where I was an account manager, a specialist, product specialist, a sales manager, everything to do with sales and training and doing a bit of coaching as well. And I transitioned into being self-employed a few years ago. And now I am helping business owners, especially female business owners who struggle with their confidence and being able to sell confidently without feeling salesy. So I do sales training and I do business coaching to help people to be able to make sales and grow their business.
I love that. And actually, I want to dive into that just for a moment, if you don't mind, because we're talking about why this matters to you and why it should matter to everyone else. And I have hunches onto why it should matter to everyone else. And we can get to that. But first, why then does this matter to you, in particular for women, confidence, and conversion?
Yeah, sales is the lifeblood of the business. At the end of the day, anyone who is in business needs to be able to market and sell their products. And those two things, marketing and selling, go hand in hand. You need to attract customers to you, but then when you've attracted those customers to you, you need to convert them, hence the sale. So they become a customer. And if you don't do that, then you won't have a business. And unfortunately, a lot of business owners who have maybe typically like me have transitioned from corporate world. They've had a job where they've done something other than sales, and now they're in business and they've got a great skill, a great product, a great service of what they're supplying to their customers, but they've never learned how to sell. So this is a problem, because if they don't sell, they're not going to get the sales. They're not going to get the cash flow in to keep the business going. In effect, they've just got a hobby rather than a business. And a lot of women in particular, and men as well, I mean, I don't want to sort of, just say it's women only, but typically I meet a lot of women who they don't want to be salespeople and they don't want to do the marketing. They want someone to do the marketing, do the selling for them. They just want to focus on serving their customer and selling their product. And unfortunately, they need to know how to market and sell themselves, as I said, because otherwise they're not going to survive very long. And a lot of the time it is that not knowing what selling is. They have this misconception about what sales is all about. Mm-hmm. They've had bad experiences about what are being sold to. And no one likes being sold to. We all like buying things when we need things, but we don't like being sold to. Yeah. And because they've had that bad experience and it feels icky and awkward, they don't want to be like that. And understandably. But the thing is with selling is when you know what selling is and how to sell the right way, you don't have to be like that. And that's where I come in. I can help people get that confidence, change that mindset, and I help them with the strategy and also the sales conversation skills.
Perfect. And I mean, I can imagine just the difference between, I feel salesy. I feel like that used car salesman. Ring a bell? Oh my goodness. Yeah. Instead, hi, how can I help? That's a whole different situation.
Yes.
Right. So I love that. I love that so much. And how do you, I'm going to poke the bear. How do you start that? Because like, that's a really deeply ingrained mindset about sales for many people, is just that idea that it's icky.
Yeah, I think the first thing is that changing that mindset about what selling is. Selling is not about telling and just talking about your product. It's not about pushing your product or service onto someone and doing all the talking. Selling is about building relationships. And we've talked about that in the past, the building of the relationship. And because people are not necessarily ready to buy when you're in front of them. They may be ready to buy in 6 months' time. So you need to build a relationship so that when they are ready to buy, they will choose you because you have a relationship with them. So selling is about building relationships. Selling is also about communicating effectively. So the whole communication skills, which would include things like asking good quality questions. So being able to ask questions and then listening for exactly what they're saying so that you can have a conversation, which is two-way. You ask questions, you're listening, and then you might ask follow-up questions to find out more information about what their concerns are, what their issues are, what their challenges are, to see whether you actually do have a product or service that can solve their problem. So that leads me to the other thing, which is salespeople really are problem solvers. We're solving people's problems. And the problem might be a leaky tap, in which case, you want to speak to a plumber who can solve that problem, for
I love
example.
it. I
You
love
know,
it.
your hair's
And when
too
I'm
long and you need
it,
a hairdresser to cut your hair. You've got a
boy,
problem. Your hair's too long.
you're calling me out here, me and my long braid. Truly
So
though, and
yes,
what you're saying is so beautiful, because this is actually a really great opportunity to shine a light on the way sales and marketing do hold hands, because these questions serve as market research. These questions serve as the answer to how do you keep them involved in your company? How do you keep them engaged? How do you nurture that relationship all the way up until the sale, whether that's in a week, 6 months, or 2 years? How do you keep them engaged? Is through that sales process, those questions you ask before you even ask for the sale.
yes, absolutely. So you have to have a conversation. You want to build a relationship. How do you build relationships? You have conversations. You
Mhm.
get to know the other person. You get to find out what their problem is so that you understand them deeply, but also get to know that person, how they communicate themselves, because a really good salesperson understands different people's buying modes and buying emotions and personality styles so that they can communicate in the same way that the person in front of them communicates. And that then helps build the rapport as well. So, understanding who you are, as well as understanding who your prospect is, and being able to be flexible to communicate with them in their style. That's going to help build the relationship as well.
I love that. And communication style is so important. And I really love actually the way you said that sales is not telling. That was something that really stuck out to me, is those words, sales is not telling. And we had said, actually, if anybody didn't catch our little preamble before the show over on Instagram, you should totally check it out. We had said, we're not really going to talk about storytelling, but if I'm being honest, a really key aspect of storytelling and marketing is the saying, show, don't tell.
Yes.
And so it's being reflected in sales. We can
Yeah.
tap into that creative and curious part of ourselves, that part of ourselves that is really geared up to serve
Yeah.
in the sales process.
Yes.
It doesn't need to be starch and white collar and detached. It can
No.
actually be very emotive.
Yes. I love the word you just used then as well, curious. Being curious. I think to be successful at selling and marketing, you need to be curious about other people. So with market research, you need to be curious to find out more about your customer and who you're targeting, and learning more about them so that you can target them effectively. And then in a sales conversation, being curious about them and their problem, and curious about how have they tried to solve that problem, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what are they looking for now. I mean, there's lots of good quality questions, and that's a skill in itself, to be able to dig deep and find out and really and as you're asking questions, you're connecting with them. People love talking about themselves and their business, and so it's easy to have a conversation when you know how to ask questions, but you also have to have that other skill of listening and not
Yes.
jumping in to interrupt when they are talking. So you have to be very present. That's another, I think, skill of building that relationship and communicating, is the presence to actually be totally focused on the moment, the conversation, what they're saying, and not having a little conversation in your head thinking about what you're going to say next, and not jumping in to interrupt them.
And that can be really challenging for a lot of people. I know it's challenging for me. This is actually something where I don't know if you've read, but Oscar Trimboli, he's an expert in listening, and I've dove into his world quite a few years ago now. And One of my main listening villains was that little voice. I wanted to interrupt because I had this thing and I had to be quiet, stop and listen. And
Yeah.
the thing with that is that, like, it's hard. Just like staying curious and not jumping the gun, and because I know that feeling where you're like, I know I can help you, but you can't rush it. You
No.
have to form that relationship, establish the know, like, trust factor, and listen. Zip the lip. There are so many strategies involved in that. Can you share with us a little bit of your insights about those strategies and how we can kind of hone in a lot of that excitement that happens on a sales call? Or even,
Well,
sorry, in the sales process, even start
yeah.
to finish.
Yeah, I think if you're genuinely curious and you've got a genuine interest in people and in the person in front of you, and a genuine interest and desire to be able to solve their problem, whether you have the solution for their problem, your product may or may not be able to help them. But if you're there wanting to help them regardless, because it may be that when you've discovered what their problem is, your product or service is not the right solution. Maybe you don't have what they need. But if you're then able to, again, provide that service, because as a salesperson, the other thing we are is we're service providers. So we're relationship builders, we're problem solvers, and we are service providers. And if you can provide that service to say, uh, I know someone who can help you. I can't help you today, but I do know someone that could help you. And you can refer them to someone else. Then that's, again, it's building the rapport, but you're selling because you might be end up selling somebody else's product. But it's all part of the whole process of building that relationship with them. Because once you do that, when they do have a problem that you can solve, who's the first person they're going to come to? They're going to come to you because you've got this relationship with them. And also, you may not get the sale straight away and they may not be ready to buy. Only about 3%, it's a very small percentage of people are ready to buy when you're in front of them. And many of them are still looking. Many of them don't even know they have a problem, a problem that you can actually solve. They're not even problem aware. So being able to understand where your prospect is in what I call the scale of urgency. They're either very urgent, I need it now, the tap's leaking,
You're in
there's a flood
crisis.
in the house, or they don't even know, there's the rattle, they don't even know there's been some rattling in the pipes and they don't even know that they're going to have a problem. It's not going to be for another 4 weeks or something. So understanding where your prospect is in that scale of urgency, I call it. And if they're not urgent now, then we have to play the long game. We have to build the relationship. We have to help them out where we can, and we have to continue that relationship. And that's where regular meetings or having them on email lists, or whether you're social media, doing podcasts and interviews like this, so people get to know you, like you, trust you, so that when they are ready, they remember who you are.
I love that so much. And if anybody was watching, if you're listening, you wouldn't have seen this. But if anyone was watching, you probably saw I speak a lot with my body. I can't help it. And I just went, ooh, it's just everything clenched up. And I was like, I was so excited. But I know my listening villain, so I zipped it and I held on close. And one of my strategies, just to let everybody know, is to write notes. So if you're an interrupter and you want to do better with sales by listening better, take the time to learn some of these tips. Take notes so that you remember it, and you can take the note and refocus, right? I've always got my notes. And then you can refocus on the conversation and come back to your notes later. And number 2, take a drink of water. It helps you to zip your lip without bursting at the seams.
Yes.
But the thing that got me excited, we're going to loop back to that. The thing that got me excited was that you said you're not selling now, not necessarily your own services. You're directing them to someone else, but you're still selling yourself.
Yes.
And everybody who's watching, who knows anything about this show, knows you're never not marketing. And that's what that is. That's what that is. Even when you're not selling your own services directly, even when you're not intentionally marketing yourself, you are always selling and marketing yourself. You are always giving people information that will influence their decisions around you in the future.
Yeah. And that leads me to the next a point of what is selling, and what are you doing? Who are you when you're a salesperson? You're also an educator,
Yes.
because you're educating them on who you are, and you're educating them on your product and your service, but also educating them on maybe other aspects of business that might be complementary and supportive and that peripheral of business. So when you're putting content out on social media or you're doing a presentation, you might talk about different topics.
Mm.
You educate, and prospects need to be educated so they can make educated decisions about purchasing a product or service. And if you're the one providing that valuable education, then your credibility is going up in their eyes. So again, when they are ready to buy, who are they going to choose?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing, something that I really love, because, and I heard you say this without saying it, is that yes, there's education is in a how to and authority building content and the way your touch points are. There's also what you're teaching them about yourself and who you are and how you approach things and how you articulate things and what kind of space you create through your presence, whether that is on a call, in
Mhm.
person, through your content. You're
Yeah.
creating a feeling, right?
Yes.
And
Energy.
isn't it, that's
It's an
right.
energy.
That's right. And isn't it Maya Angelou who said, right? People won't remember what you do, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Feel. Yes, absolutely. And so that whole energy, you've got to have enthusiasm and energy about your product and be passionate about helping them. And I know some people say, oh, well, that comes easy to you, Catherine. You're an extrovert, and I've been doing this for years. So my passion and my energy for what I do and how I help people comes through naturally. But even introverted people can still be passionate about what they do and helping people. And introverts can still be good salespeople. In fact, some very good salespeople are introverts, because they have a skill that sometimes they've mastered a skill that the extroverts are not as good at, which we talked about before, which is
Mhm.
listening. The introvert is more likely to sit back and listen. The extrovert is more likely to jump in and want to solve the problem and interrupt.
That's
And that's
absolutely
why
true.
you and I think we've both got that a bit of an extrovert in us. That's why we have to really work hard at that skill of the powerful pause, zipping it, and practice our skill of listening.
I really appreciate that. And I think it's a really interesting notion because I actually very much resonate with being an introvert, and everybody here is going to roll their eyes and be like, yeah, right, Shauna, you crazy. No, I'm very, very introverted. I am what is known as an outgoing introvert. And this is actually very common. Once an introvert gets to know you, or you put them in a situation where they get to really hone in on the thing that they actually are passionate about, and you give them a safe space to express that passion, you're not shutting them up.
No, it's
You're
true.
not shutting them up. But
True.
I know friends who are like really amped up about space, but they're not going to talk about space just anywhere, right? They're going to
Yeah.
sit there quietly and be on their own or do whatever. Listening, as you say. But if I go over there and like, hey, did you hear that meteor that went by Jupiter the other day? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
There they go. Right. So it's
Get
really
off.
about your hunkering in. And this is the importance of being authentic in your business, of being really in alignment with your passions that will help you to make the connections and relationships that you need, start the
Yeah.
conversations that are required to move things forward. Being able to listen with curiosity comes from that point of passion and alignment. And then, of
Yeah.
course, selling with authority, selling with zest, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all coming from that space of alignment.
Yeah. And when you get to that point of selling, making your offer and actually talking about your product and the pricing and getting to that sort of pointy end of the sales conversation, there's a lot that's gone on beforehand to set it all up so that when you do talk about your product and service, they're ready, they're open to listen and hear about it. And often there's a tip, and you mentioned about taking notes. And what I wanted to add there is, always take notes in a sales call, and ask permission first. Ask permission. Is it okay if I take notes? I just want to make sure I get down, the most important key points and I don't miss anything. I really want to truly understand, where you're coming from. And no one's going to say, no, don't take notes. I mean, I'm not talking about get a tape recorder out, but take notes for your own benefit. But ask permission. But also, when you get to that point where you want to transition into, you've realized from the conversation that, yes, I can solve your problem and my product, my service will help you. Then there has to be a transition into that part of the conversation and asking permission to be able to say something like, I really truly believe that I can help you with that concern, XYZ. Would you be open to hearing about how I can help you? Ask permission rather than just go, yep, I can help you. This is how, bang. Asking permission, because then you're giving the prospect an opportunity to say, I'm not really interested. They've feigned interest, or not at this time. I'm not ready. And that can take the conversation on a different direction. But if everything's gone to plan and gone right, you've done the questioning and the listening the right way, followed the process. When you ask that permission, and you would only ask it because you really feel like you can solve their problem and they need the problem solving, they're not going to say no. They're going to say, yeah, sure. How can you help me? Yeah, this is a problem. So then when you do start sharing your solution, they're going to be more open to it. You're not going to come across as being so pushy because, well, they've basically given you permission to share with them what you can do for them.
There's power in psychology behind that. In number one, of course, they've already given you permission.
Yeah.
Like you just said. And so their mind is already ready to receive. But then also the power of yes. Saying yes, the more you get somebody to say yes, the harder it is for them to say no. And I'm not talking about coercive strategies. I'm not talking about twisting people's arms. I'm just talking about if you genuinely feel like you can help somebody and they've already said yes and informed yes, to say, I would like to actually hear more, to entertain this, and then continue to ask them, does this make sense to you?
Yeah.
And come from a place of service.
Yeah.
They are going to understand and to be on board with you a lot more willingly. And then this is the beauty of it, because then they're not just ready to say yes and dive in. They're excited.
Yeah.
Right? That's what
they want to know. Yeah, they're excited
them
because they think someone can solve my problem. They may have been looking for weeks or months or years for a solution to this problem. And here you are standing in front of them saying, I can help you. And they'll be like, thank goodness. Tell me, how can you help me? Now, that's not going to be for everyone every time. But eventually, even people that aren't ready today, they might be ready and in that situation later. And that's why we continue building the relationship. So, yeah, there's a whole process to the whole conversation, the whole sales process, and there's a lot involved that you need to know. But once you start putting some of these, a few little elements here, and good questioning and good listening and practicing these skills, you'll get better and better at it. And over time, it becomes natural. So salespeople who have been veteran sales for a long time, like myself, over 30 years, we do these things without even thinking because we've been doing it, for so long. But you need to learn the skills. You need to put them into practice, and then and keep practicing.
Practice and practice and practice. Practice makes progress, everyone.
Absolutely. Now, and that's why you need someone to support you in that, like coaching or training, to keep you moving forward, not going stagnant.
Moving forward and accountable, because it's sometimes hard. I know for a fact that it's hard to form habits if you don't have that sort of accountability. Now, that said, I would like to invite you to share some final words about the sales process, because we've reached that sale. We've said yes all along. We are on board. So what would be that final push that you want people to know when they're entering into that first conversation, that curious, ask questions, start the relationship conversation, all the way through to that, yes, excited, let's go. What's that final push that you'd like to share with people?
I think there comes a time where you need to stop talking, stop selling, stop doing that conversation, and just get on with getting the paperwork done, signing them up, doing whatever you need to complete the sale. When they're at that high point where they're saying yes and they're excited, if you keep trying to oversell them, they will go past that point, and you could end up losing the sale because you didn't stop and just get on with doing the paperwork and closing the deal at that time. So knowing when there's that critical point where they are ready to buy and you need to take them over the line and say, well, let's get started. Or, would you like to fill in the paperwork now? Whatever transition line you would use to be able to say, okay, let's move into doing it, you're going to become a customer, whatever that is. It's important to recognize that point. And then, of course, afterwards, you have to keep the relationship going. After sales service, that's still part of the sales process. You got to make sure that if they're logging into something, they've got the login details. If it's a product, then do they get the training to be able to use that product? When are they going to receive it? You need to make sure and follow up that they're happy with it, within a few days or a week or whatever, is checking in on them. Doing the after sales support is also important. And the final thing as well then is, at that point as well, you've got your happy customer. That's the time to ask for maybe a referral. Do they know anybody else that they could introduce you to? There'll be no better time than when they've just said yes to your product or service, that they're open to actually recommending you to someone else.
And this all involves a lot of step-by-step stages and processes. And you offer this, though.
Yes, I do. And as a sales trainer, I've actually got a program, an online training program that people go through at their own pace, which is the whole process, the mindset, the strategy, and the sales conversation skills that you need. But I also provide that business coaching to support them on their training, but also to support them in their accountability in their business and moving forward. So, and I offer free training. I do a lot of education, I do a lot of podcasts. And in fact, I do sales masterclasses regularly. I've got one coming up on Thursday, the 19th. That's next week, 12 noon, Queensland time, Australia Eastern Standard Time. A 60-minute live on Zoom where you get to see me in action and get to learn, basically what the skills are that you need to learn to be able to sell effectively and confidently. And there's no sales pitch on that. It's purely education. So there's a link that'll be in the show notes or in the I think, Shauna, you've got it on the screen now.
I do.
If anyone wants to register and come along, then use that link to register and come and join me for a live class.
I definitely encourage everybody to do that, because that is a massive opportunity for you to take advantage of, so you can actually see all of these steps laying out in an organized way, not just Shauna picking brains, okay? This is actually laying out so that you can take notes and then implement it. You can implement it day of. So I strongly recommend that you use the link in the show notes to access this masterclass, join Katherine, and actually dive into this sales process that makes sense, allows you to connect authentically and convert with conversations. Now, with that, I want to thank you so much, Katherine, for being on the show, and encourage everyone else to subscribe, join in, follow along, because we get to talk to at least one expert like Katherine every week and dive into this world where, we're never not marketing. So with that, thanks again, Katherine. We'll see you next time.